Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of Keipert Labs. In today's video, we're going to give you an introduction to cells, this basic building block of all living things, our first kind of foray into the field of biology. So what are we going to cover in this video? Firstly, we're going to talk through the history of the discovery of cells. So when as scientists did we work out that cells were a real thing and how they connected to living things. We're going to go through some of the fundamentals of what we call cell theory, or kind of the scientific unpacking of what we understand about cells. And we're also going to talk through some examples of different types of cells that exist. So how were cells discovered? How did we first work out that they were real? Well, we trace it back to, at its heart, a man named Robert Hooke in the 1660s. He used a piece of technology which was very new to them at the time, called the microscope. We take it for granted these days. We have them in our lab that we use all the time. But that he wasn't the very first person to come up with the concept of the microscope, but he refined it and designed it to what we call the compound microscope, a combination of lenses that he could use and that we still rely upon to observe cells. So he observed cells in the plant called cork, where we actually get like corks for bottles and things. It's kind of the bark of a tree. He observed these cells for the very first time. So here you can see kind of, this is the sort of image you see under a microscope of cells of a cork plant. And so he called them cells because it comes from the Latin of cella, which is a small room. So kind of based off the rooms that monks would stay in a monastery, and so you're seeing how that these cells kind of stack like little rooms in a building. It's the same reason that we call in jail that they're called cells, these little small rooms of a building that are contained. Okay, and so and it also this cella is the same basis of the name of the sides of a honeycomb in like what bees would build. And so cells were named and discovered for the first time. And there were a number of different discoveries that followed on from this to help understand where cells are found, and the fact that cells are inside plants and they're inside animals and they can be studied and they have different shapes and sizes and the different structures. And so, this is kind of the first development of this level of understanding of biology, of the science of living things. And so there were lots of different discoveries kind of made over the next almost 200 years by the time that we get to this point where we're talking about cell theory. So where the scientists had actually kind of collected together the understandings that people had about cells and started to put together some statements. So we're talking 1839 by Theodor Schwann and Matthias Schleiden, so two kind of German botanists. So 1839, so almost 200 years later, was when these ideas were kind of collected together. And they proposed three main concepts. The first one is that all living things are made up of cells, and cell products is kind of the more modern kind of tack onto that. So the idea is that anything that is living is made up of cells, either one cell for the smallest and simplest, up to trillions upon trillions of cells like us and other organisms that we say they're multicellular. And likewise, that we as living things are also, other parts of us are made up of cell products. So for example, if you feel your hair, you can say I don't have exactly a lot to feel. You've got some down here as well. The chemical that makes up your hair and your fingernails and your toenails, keratin is what it's called, is a product of cells. It's not a cell in itself, but it is created by cells. And so living things are made up of combinations of cells and cell products. The second main idea is that the cell is the basic building block of living things. So it's the brick with which we build very complicated structures. The cells are structured in certain ways and organized in other ways to build bigger and bigger things. And we will look at that in a future video. And lastly, the idea is that all cells that exist now came from pre-existing cells. So new cells come from existing cells. And as those existing cells die off, then the new cells take their place, and then they will form new cells, and so on and so on, and life kind of continues. Okay, so these are kind of the three sort of ideas that are around this time. Now, these days that we have a greater understanding, and we can kind of expand on this, but for us, at our level where we are now, this is the main ideas that we need to understand. So we talked about that there are different types of cells. Let's have a look at some that exist inside humans. Now, there are plant and animal cells which have differences, and we're going to look at that in a future video. But inside you, what different types of cells might we find? Well, on the outside we have skin cells. Okay, so the cells that make up this stretchy fabric that covers and protects you, forms a barrier to the outside world that stops nasty things getting in, stops you from leaking out, for want of a better term. We have blood cells, so like we have a red blood cell here used to transport oxygen around your body, and a white blood cell which is used as like a soldier to protect you. We have nerve cells called neurons which help to send messages around your body. We have muscle cells which are, they've got this stripy sort of appearance, we call them striated, that are designed to stretch and contract in order to make muscles move. We have sex cells, also called gametes, that is sperm and ovum, which are designed to help produce new life. All of these and many, many more different types of cells exist inside you. All of them have a specialized job and a structure and a function, like a shape and structure that helps them to meet that need. Okay, so we've talked about the discovery of cells by Robert Hooke in 1665 using a microscope. We've outlined some of the basic ideas about cell theory, that building blocks of all living things that came from pre-existing cells, and that all sorts of different types of cells exist that have particular jobs to help keep you alive. All right, thanks very much for watching. Bye for now.